Hey everybody, it's Reese Witherspoon here. I've written a new novel with #1 best-selling author Harlan Coben. It's called Gone Before Goodbye. It's an international thriller about a disgraced former surgeon who is looking for the truth behind her husband's disappearance. Gone Before Goodbye is a nonstop thrill ride, and you cannot put it down. And the great news is, it's available now wherever books and audiobooks are sold.
We're in a crisis, and with everything we learned last election, I just don't believe Senator Markey should be running for another 6-year term at 80 years old. Even more, I don't think someone who's been in Congress for half a century is the right person to meet this moment and win the future.
Moulton versus Markey. Age is the issue, with the younger Democrat insisting Ed Markey is too old for the Senate.
Holding the powerful accountable, from Washington, D.C. to right here in southern New England. This is 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Gene Valicenti. This is 10 News Conference. Senator Markey, at almost 80 years old, is running for re-election. Too old, says his fellow Democrat Seth Moulton, looking to take him out in the primary in what's shaping up to be a nasty primary. Let's get over to Brian Crandall. He's been covering this. You know, I read an editorial in the Boston Herald, I believe, that said that if this was the private sector, Moulton would be charged with age discrimination. He's coming right out.
Oh, that's basically the case. Yeah. And again, this is the Massachusetts Senate race. Senator Markey, he's been in the Senate since 2013, but he's been in Congress since 1976. Yep. He was a rep for 36 years and then won that seat. And, you know, he was challenged in 2020 by a younger person, Joe Kennedy. We can get into that more in a minute. But Seth Moulton from north of Boston, so Markey's from Malden, that area as well. But he basically, in this video that he put out on Wednesday announcing his candidacy, which was kind of expected, as you said, basically made no bones about it, that that's his real only issue. And he mentioned in that clip that you just played, as we saw in the presidential election, so he didn't name Joe Biden, but clearly he's insinuating that, oh, look what happens if you have somebody in the race who's too old. Yep. Now, I don't think anybody said that Ed Markey is in a condition that people have said Joe Biden was in.
It's a 6-year term. So if he wins, he'd be 86. Right. Okay. And this is nothing new to Markey. He faced these ageist allegations the last time around. But it is a concern. You know, you and I are taping on a Friday. Just yesterday, Mitch McConnell tripped.
Fell over. Well, and he's had
fell over. He went right down while reporters we're trailing him. And there's other questions about Nancy Pelosi and others. So politics is a rough game. This is now a legitimate issue.
Yeah, and it is. And again, with some of those other people like McConnell, you could say that he's had the health issues that were public before, where he kind of froze on camera. I don't think that's happened with Markey. So he could probably make that argument that, okay, I may be 80 years old, or almost 80, would be 80 next year, but I'm in shape enough to run. And let's take a look. You know, we did a story on Wednesday about Moulton getting into this race. So let's take a look at what we reported then. After 10 years in the U.S. House, Seth Moulton now seeks higher office by taking on his own party.
Democrats have failed to stop Donald Trump's harmful, racist agenda. Our party has clung to the status quo, insisted on using the same old playbook, and isn't fighting hard enough. Real people across Massachusetts are being hurt by Democratic leaders refusing to do everything they can to win.
The fellow Democrat in Moulton's path is Senator Ed Markey, running for re-election. Markey has been in the Senate for 12 years and was in the House for 36 years before that.
We're in a crisis, and with everything we learned last election, I just don't believe Senator Markey should be running for another 6-year term at 80 years old. Even more, I don't think someone who's been in Congress for half a century is the right person to meet this moment and win the future.
Markey is a leading progressive in Washington and a frequent critic of Donald Trump. He and Moulton have similar positions on big issues, both calling for an assault weapons ban and fighting climate change. But Moulton made national headlines and came under fire from Democrats after last year's presidential election, criticized his party for appearing to lose on the issue of transgender athletes, saying he would not want his daughters to get run over on an athletic field.
We have a wing of our party that shames us, that tries to cancel people who even bring up these difficult topics.
Moulton is trying to make the same case against Markey that failed in 2020. That's when Congressman Joe Kennedy, whose star was on the rise at the time, challenged Markey in the Democratic primary. Markey won comfortably in that high-profile race. Now, Ed Markey, in response, his campaign basically just said he's working in Washington to try to end the government shutdown, while Seth Moulton is announcing a political campaign, and that's what leadership is trying to end the shutdown.
Yeah, and he's enjoying all this talk that, well, it's ageist, it's unfair. Markey is to the left. So is Moulton, although on occasion Moulton surprises us. He came out against transgendered bathrooms. And like Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania, he's not afraid to go after his party. In fact, he's been very critical of the way they're going lately.
And he put it right in the campaign ad that Democrats, as he said, are not fighting hard enough. And that is, that's interesting because you kind of hear that more from the left, like the progressive side. Markey would probably say, like, well, I'm on the Green New Deal. I'm vocal. And the issue is going to be, I guess, how is Seth Moulton going to say, well, I'm going to fight harder? What does that look like in Washington to go down and say you're going to the playbook that Democrats are using against Donald Trump just doesn't work anymore. So what is that?
Yeah, I guess he's saying physically I can fight harder. I've got the stamina of a younger man. He's only 46 versus Markey would be 80.
Right. And as we mentioned in that piece there, Joe Kennedy, he didn't, in 2020, he didn't come out and say that Markey was too old.
It was suggested.
He said we need a change in leadership. He danced around it a little bit. And I think the knock on Kennedy, Markey ended up winning by, I think, 10 points in the Democratic primary. But Joe Kennedy had a national profile. Like a couple of years before, he had given the Democratic response to Trump's State of the Union speech. So he was on the rise. So I think the knock on him, though, was he wasn't able to explain why exactly he was challenging Ed Markey other than maybe I'm a Kennedy and it's my turn.
Yeah. And I'm a younger man, too. All right, coming up on 10 News Conference, let's continue with the politics. Now, another push for an archives/museum for Rhode Island's treasures, this time scaled back in price, but still not cheap.
Thank you for turning to 10, your news leader. 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti continues right now.
Welcome back. There's been a push for a dedicated archive/museum to house the state's treasures and historic documents for years, pushed by so many secretaries of state, including the current one who's backing a scaled-down, cheaper version, but not cheap. It's important to put this in perspective. I took the tour of what we're using now, and Brian just followed up on it, too. You were in the same building. It's a nondescript office building downtown owned by Joe Paolino. We pay him, what, $300,000 a year?
$300,000 a year, and then there's a bunch of documents that are also stored at Iron Mountain for another $10,000. This facility, I think, they say is better than the last one they were putting it in because I think they had some water issues there. But Secretary of State Gregg Amore has been calling for a state archives, and you mentioned it before. So did his predecessor, Nellie Gorbea, unveiled a plan, I think it was 6 years ago, which originally was $52 million. And Amore put that one forward again last year. The legislature balked because now the price tag was $100 million. They came back and said, we'll give you $500,000 to study it and come back potentially with something else. So now the Secretary of State has come back with a new version that's $60 million. And I took a look with him again at that facility, and he talked about, again, the reason and the justification for this new plan. Let's take a look.
I always get tingles when I see this.
Checking out Rhode Island's copies of the Declaration of Independence. One of them pulled out of a nondescript drawer.
This is my favorite one, and you can see Hancock's signature there.
They, along with thousands of the state's important documents, are tucked away in a storage room.
This should be out on display.
We're inside the portion of an office building the state currently leases for its archives in downtown Providence at a cost of $300,000 a year. And as he's been saying for a while now,
Rhode Island is the only state that does not have a state-owned, purpose-built archives.
Secretary of State Gregg Amore wants to build one. But the $100 million plan he submitted last year, first created by his predecessor, did not go very far in the legislature. So now he's back with a scaled-down version, a two-story building, half the size of the last plan, with a preferred location across the street from the State House on what is now the front lawn of the state's administration building.
We think this is a solution that is affordable and meets the requirements to preserve and protect our documents, but also make those special documents accessible to the public and to share Rhode Island's rich history.
Called the Rhode Island State History Center, the new vision includes a vault to protect and preserve documents, along with an education area and exhibit space to display high-profile artifacts. Cost, $45 million.
This will certainly be a tourist attraction.
To reduce the size of that building, the new plan includes moving a large portion of the documents to the library at the University of Rhode Island. $15 million more for that. You use the word affordable. I mean, you're still talking $60 million here. Do you think that's a realistic ask in today's financial climate?
Yeah, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. It's pay me now or pay me later. The state of Rhode Island will need a purpose-built archives building. This facility is filling up.
Is it hard to make the ask for that kind of money when there may not be people beating down the door being like, we need change? It's not like housing or healthcare.
Yeah, I actually think it's embarrassing that 49 states don't just get by. These are unique buildings, right? So they have requirements that a normal building would not. It's one of the reasons that it's very difficult to refurbish an existing building to support an archives. And so, yeah, there's a cost to making sure that the vault is built to preserve these documents.
Now the history teacher by trade has to sell that argument to lawmakers.
This is an essential part of preserving the history of the state, because the history of Rhode Island is the history of the nation.
Might help if they get rid of that cheap plastic sign outside with the plastic letters. Now, let's be fair to the building they're using. It has fire suppression. There are special cases that are preserving our copy of the Declaration of Independence, things like that. The point he's making is it's not fitting for the character of those documents, the importance of them, that they need a purpose-built place that we can all enjoy.
Right, for basically preserving them, but I think the grander vision is to make it a place for tourists and visitors to come, and as they say in Field of Dreams, Secretary Amore says if you build it, they will come. He says whenever they do like open houses and special events at the State House and they open things up, history buffs will come and check it out. So let's build something like a museum exhibit space so people can come check this out. Again, they drilled down some of the details where now, as you look at the rendering, that would be like on the front corner of what the Powers Administration building across the street from the State House. Before there was talk, oh, maybe we'll put it on that empty patch of land on the other side of the State House over the train station. Well, that vibrates, and I think that was no good. And then there's a parking lot on the other side of the Department of Transportation on Smith Street, but if they put it there, then that would take up a parking lot, and they would need to find parking. So I think the vision is to make it a draw that people come to.
Well, all right, I understand. You're going to be a cheerleader for that. I don't know that the people will be lining up to go in it. Perhaps they will. Let's hope that that's that kind of a draw. It's a story lower than the original version. It's not quite as tall.
It's half the square footage is what they're saying, and to accommodate for that, they want to move a lot of documents to URI. And so, again, a quarter of the $60 million cost would be to move the stuff and store it at the library at URI. So that's how they scaled down the building from a $100 million building to now 45, but then spend some extra money to do some other things.
And he also mentioned last time I did this story that the paintings, the great paintings in the State House, the Gilbert Stuart of Washington, they're in danger. And that's kind of under his purview, too. They need special preservation.
Right. And he's been making that argument as well. And that there are other documents that are in the State House on display. They want to move them all under one roof. Again, make it a place for people to come and see. But again, the Gilbert Stuart is the one that hangs over in the state room when the governor does press conferences.
I think he has the governor's support on this.
Well, so the reaction I got, because he's got to get, he wants to pay for this through the budget, not a bond issue that had been talked about, one of the past plans. Put it in the budget to pay out over years, but to do that, you got to get the support of the legislature and the governor. So I reached out to the governor's office, the speaker, the Senate president. Governor McKee's office, House Speaker Shekarchi's office, they both basically said, we'll take a look at it. It's being reviewed under the budget process. The Senate president, Val Lawson, also a history teacher, was more emphatic in supporting and saying that there is a need for this, and she's grateful to Secretary of State Amore, and so she was a little more effusive in kind of backing the idea. Of course, the devil's in the details on whether or not they're going to come up with $60 million.
Apart from whether or not it will draw crowds or a tourist attraction, the state's treasures are befitting of a place that we could all enjoy them at some point. The documents are there. He makes the case.
And he makes the case that every other state does it. And we're, one of the 13 original colonies. Next year is the 250th birthday of America, so there's going to be stuff going on with that. So I think it might be a good time to, if he wants to get any momentum, maybe pull on that patriotic feel.
All right, Brian, thanks.